In the heart of the Florentine Renaissance, when the city of Florence became a living laboratory where philosophy, politics, poetry, and art converged, a painting was born that would forever transform the way the West understands beauty. In an era marked by an obsessive search for balance, harmony, and perfection, Sandro Botticelli created a work that seemed not to belong to the physical world, but to a spiritual territory that existed between myth and revelation: the birth of Venus. This painting, created around 1485, not only represents the classical goddess emerging from the sea, it portrays the very arrival of beauty into the world, as if humanity were witnessing an inner awakening after centuries of medieval darkness. To understand what its creator achieved, one must delve into his life, the Florence in which he worked, the commissions of the Medici family, and the intellectual atmosphere that shaped this eternal icon. Sandro Botticelli, whose real name was Alessandro di Mariano di Vanni Filippi, was a deeply sensitive artist, more poet than painter in the traditional sense. He lived surrounded by giants such as Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo, but he never sought to compete with them in the realistic representation of the human body or in the mathematical structure of perspective. His quest was something else. He aspired to capture the spiritual essence of things, the inner glow that cannot be seen with the eyes, but with the imagination. While Leonardo dissected corpses to understand human anatomy, Botticelli seemed to dissect the soul. That is why his style is unlike any other of the Renaissance. He does not seek to imitate reality, but to sublimate it. His figures are stylized, his gestures delicate, his compositions ethereal. In his paintings, beauty breathes but does not weigh. It exists yet seems to float between two worlds. And the birth of Venus is the highest point of that vision. The work was commissioned, according to most historians, by Lorenzo di Pierfrancesco de' Medici, cousin of Lorenzo the Magnificent, the most important patron of Renaissance art. The Medici did not only finance artists, they financed ideas, philosophical movements, and cultural projects that sought to revive the classical world. Their villa in Castello was filled with pagan symbols, poetic gardens, mythological sculptures, and philosophical allusions. There the birth of Venus was placed, not to be contemplated by crowds, but by an intimate circle of Neoplatonic thinkers who saw beauty as a path to the divine. This detail is crucial. Venus was not painted to provoke, but to elevate. For the Medici, the goddess represented the very essence of civilization, the force that transforms the instinctive into the noble, the mortal into the eternal. Thus the work was born as a tribute to the human spirit, wrapped in the form of an ancient myth. The moment Botticelli chose to represent is not found in any classical text exactly as it appears. The Greek myth says that Venus was born from the foam of the sea, but the artist added the scene of her arrival on the shore, with the goddess on a seashell pushed by winged winds. This mixture of sources demonstrates his creative freedom. What matters is the symbolism. Venus appears at an intermediate point, suspended between heaven and earth, between the material and the spiritual worlds. Her posture is impossible from an anatomical point of view, but perfect from a symbolic one. It is the posture of modesty, the so-called Venus pudica, a gesture inherited from classical sculpture, in which the goddess covers her nudity while revealing it. This gesture is not erotic, it is spiritual. Botticelli conceived her as a manifestation of purity, a creature born not from the human but from the sacred. The most fascinating aspect is her gaze. Venus does not blink. She looks at no one in particular. Her eyes seem to look inward, as if she were aware of something others cannot see. She is a being who arrives from a higher plane, carrying a silent message. Her pale, almost translucent skin speaks of an ideal beauty, not a mortal one. Her serpentine hair, defying wind and logic, suggests an internal movement, a spiritual flow. The shell, a symbol of fertility and birth since antiquity, becomes here a cosmic throne. The calm sea behind her represents divine order prior to the arrival of beauty. Everything in the work is designed to convey an idea. Beauty not only exists, it saves. To her left appear Zephyr and Aura, the winds that push Venus toward the shore. They are intertwined in a symbolic union, that represents passion, energy, the vital force that awakens the goddess. Their breath is not violent but loving, as if the entire universe were working to bring Venus into the world. To her right is the Hora of spring, a female figure who attempts to cover the goddess with a cloak full of flowers. She represents natural order, fertility, renewal. She is the guardian of the passage between worlds. With her gesture, she receives Venus as one welcomes a divine queen on earth. But behind this luminous scene there were taboos, risks, and controversies. In 15th century Florence, displaying a female nude outside a religious context was considered dangerous. Unlike what would later happen with Michelangelo or Titian, sensuality was not yet seen as a legitimate domain for art. Botticelli was ahead of his time. His Venus was a naked body, yes, but not an erotic one. It was a symbolic, philosophical body. Even so, the risk existed. The church could interpret it as pagan, immoral, or subversive. That is why the work was kept in a private villa, far from public scrutiny and protected by the political power of the Medici. After the death of Lorenzo the Magnificent, Florence experienced one of the darkest episodes in its history. The Dominican monk Girolamo Savonarola took control of the city and promoted a kind of moral purification. He organized the famous bonfires of the Vanities, where objects considered sinful were burned: books, mirrors, perfumes, luxuries, and very likely works of art. Tradition says that Botticelli, influenced by his preaching, threw some of his own works into the fire. Although it is not known for certain whether the birth of Venus was in danger, it is almost certain that it was deliberately hidden to avoid destruction. For centuries, the work remained almost invisible, silent, as if it too had needed to be reborn. As time passed, the work began to be reinterpreted. During the late Renaissance and Baroque periods, it was seen simply as an exercise in mythology. In the 19th century, scholars began to view it as a Neoplatonic allegory of spiritual beauty. And in the 20th century, a hypothesis emerged that moved the art world. Venus might be an idealized portrait of Simonetta Vespucci, the most admired woman in Florence, muse of several artists and protagonist of countless legends. Simonetta died very young, and it is said that Botticelli was deeply affected by her loss. What is certain is that when he died, he asked to be buried at her feet in the church of Ognissanti. He never married and was never known to have a partner, as if his love had been forever fixed in the image of the goddess. For many historians, Venus is not only the goddess of love, she is the eternalization of a real woman who embodied beauty for the painter. Modern restorations have revealed surprising details. The work, executed on canvas rather than on panel, an unusual decision for the time, suffered damage from humidity and tension in the material. In 1987, a major restoration was carried out that allowed the recovery of more intense original colors, pinkish tones in Venus's skin, details in the sea, the flowers, and the hair that had been hidden under darkened varnish. In addition, preparatory lines altered by the artist himself were discovered, demonstrating that Botticelli adjusted the silhouette and posture of Venus to give her a more ethereal, more spiritual character, almost as if she did not belong to the realm of flesh. Among the hidden symbols that many viewers do not notice at first glance are the roses floating through the air, associated with the simultaneous birth of love along with the goddess. The shell, beyond its obvious feminine connotation, symbolizes the union of spirit and matter. The stylized waves of the sea represent cosmic order. Venus's impossible posture is not an anatomical mistake, but a sign that she is not a terrestrial being. The most curious thing is that the image of Venus arriving on a shell does not actually appear in classical texts. It was Botticelli who created this immortal iconography that the entire world now recognizes. The Birth of Venus is not only a beautiful painting, it is a philosophical declaration. It is the affirmation that beauty is not a luxury, but a transformative force. In times of uncertainty, it represents the idea that the soul can be reborn, that the spirit can rise, that even in the midst of chaos, there exists a deep and harmonious order. That is why, centuries later, the work remains one of the most widespread, reinterpreted, and beloved images in the history of art. Because it does not simply show a goddess, it shows the moment in which humanity remembers that it is capable of contemplating the sublime, and that truth, once revealed, can never be forgotten. As the birth of Venus reappeared in history, critics began to realize that it was not only a valuable piece of the Renaissance, but a bridge between different conceptions of beauty over time. In the Middle Ages, the human body had been reduced to an imperfect, corrupt form, a reminder of sin. Instead, Botticelli returned to the body its spiritual luminosity, not from the anatomical perspective that would dominate afterward, but from the interiority of the symbol. Botticelli's Venus has no precise muscles, no complex shadows, no realistic three-dimensionality. Her strength is not in her corporeality, but in her presence. It is a body that radiates a meaning deeper than the simple sum of its forms. This poetic ability to transform the human figure into a timeless ideal was the reason why, centuries later, the pre-Raphaelites, that English movement obsessed with the spiritual purity of art, found in Botticelli an essential reference. For them, who sought to rescue lost delicacy, Botticelli was not a painter of the past. He was a master who had understood that beauty is a language that can only be perceived when the soul is willing to listen. This revaluation completely changed the destiny of the work. It went from being a silent painting in a private villa to becoming, little by little, a universal icon. Its image began to appear in books, prints, and academic studies, and when it was finally exhibited publicly, no one could ignore it anymore. The figure of Venus emerging from the sea captured the imagination of all of Europe and, with time, the world. Its influence even reached cinema, fashion, advertising, and popular culture. What is extraordinary is that despite its fame, it still preserves a kind of indescribable mystery, as if its essence could not be exhausted in a single interpretation. Each era sees something new in it because each generation needs a different type of beauty to understand itself. One of the most fascinating interpretations of the 21st century is the feminist reading proposed by several contemporary historians. For some, Venus represents the patriarchal idea of feminine beauty, delicate, silent, perfect. For others, it is precisely the opposite. Venus is the symbol of an autonomous force that arises without male intervention. She is not created by a god, nor shaped by an artisan. She is born from nature itself. In this reading, she becomes an image of the creative power that exists within the feminine, a power that does not need permission or approval to manifest. This duality turns the painting into a complex mirror where each viewer projects their own vision of the world, and it is precisely this interpretive richness that keeps it alive. The presence of the possible muse, Simonetta Vespucci, adds an emotional layer that many feel even without knowing the story. If Botticelli indeed projected in Venus the features of a real woman he admired deeply, the work ceases to be a simple mythological representation and becomes an intimate declaration, an homage, an eternal memory made of light. Simonetta's beauty was celebrated throughout Florence, but her early death turned her into a legend. If Botticelli immortalized her in his work, then The Birth of Venus is also a visual poem about grief, memory, and the desire to preserve what we love beyond time. It would not be the first time a Renaissance artist used mythology as a veil to express emotions that could not be openly declared in the society of the time. The technique of the painting also reflects deeply spiritual decisions. Instead of using a wooden panel as was customary, Botticelli chose a canvas, which gave the work a different flexibility and a softer texture. Tempera painting allows for flat colors without major contrasts, contributing to that dreamlike aspect that envelops the entire scene. The fine contours, characteristic of Botticelli, seem not to enclose the figures, but to accompany them, as if the drawing were a melody guiding the viewer through the image. The undulating lines of Venus's hair or the feathers of Zephyr's wings give the sensation that everything moves to the rhythm of the wind. Nothing in the work is static. Everything is alive, breathing, capturing an eternal instant. The dialogue between myth and nature becomes evident in the tiny details many overlook: the flowers flying as the winds blow, The waves of the sea that seem more symbolic than real water, the trees waiting for Venus on the shore, as if the earth itself were preparing to receive the goddess. These elements are key because they reveal that the painting is not a literal scene but a ritual setting. We are not witnessing the portrait of a myth but a ceremony. The precise moment when beauty enters the world and the world responds with joy. This ceremonial character is what makes the work feel sacred, even for those who do not believe in ancient gods. Over time, restorations and technical studies allowed for a better understanding of the composition. It was discovered that Botticelli added gold pigments to Venus's hair so that it would shine in the light. Although most of that shine has been lost over the centuries, the original intention speaks of an almost mystical vision. Venus was meant to reflect light like a divine apparition. Hidden lines were also found, revealing changes in the position of her body, indicating that Botticelli was not seeking realism but symbolic balance. His priority was to convey a philosophical message through visual harmony. This obsessive search for the exact form of the spirit explains why his style influenced so many later movements. One of the most intriguing aspects of the work is how it has endured culturally. While many Renaissance paintings are admired by experts, the birth of Venus became part of the global popular imagination. Its image is instantly recognizable, even among people who do not know the artist's name. This universality is due to the fact that the figure of Venus embodies something deeply human: the desire to be born again, to look at the world with clean eyes, to feel that beauty still has the power to transform our lives. In an era marked by speed, noise, and visual saturation, Venus's serenity acts as a reminder of that which can still touch us without words. And perhaps that is the definitive reason why this painting continues to be loved, because it not only shows the birth of a goddess, but the birth of human sensitivity. Even today, when we see it, we feel something we cannot fully explain, a mixture of calm, curiosity, and longing. It is as if the painting silently invites us to remember who we are at our core. Venus emerges from the sea to remind us that beauty is not a frivolity, but a force capable of guiding us toward what is most elevated within us. Every line, every color, every detail is designed to awaken that inner spark. With this work, Botticelli did not just paint a myth, he painted a promise. The promise that even after eras of darkness, the soul can be reborn. The promise that beauty is not a luxury, but a spiritual right. The promise that there will always be a moment, even if small, even if silent, when life begins again. And that is why, 5 centuries later, Venus continues to emerge from the sea before our eyes, intact, luminous, eternal.